What's going on, good people? Welcome back to another episode of Trading My Live Account. Today is day number 3, May 25th, 2023. We made some trades today, so let's get into it. So coming into the session, my goal was to just try and trade my best setups and take those setups the proper and correct way. So let's talk about the important levels on the chart. Right now, there are no major important levels. We moved past yesterday's closing price, so it wasn't really too much of a factor in today's session. So let's start our analysis at 9:30 and go from there. So when we opened, we had an initial spike to the downside where we eventually created a double bottom followed by a higher low. So that right there is one of my favorite setups, a downtrend reversal that has a higher low that gets established. So I'll circle my higher low, draw my level of support based on the lowest price of that higher low, and then look for prices to come back and retest it. So that's the mindset that I was looking for and trying to use on trade number 1. So I was able to get in right here as prices came back to retest support and took it up to my scalp target. So after that, prices continued to push back through the zone, didn't even stop at all at the zone, continued pushing higher until we got back to the upper zone that we had drawn from the pre-market. So we can't see where that started, but I think it started at around like maybe 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So the fact that it was able to extend this far into the market and still be relevant means that this zone is definitely important, and it's going to come back to play a role later on in the session also. So once we push into this zone, I want you guys to look at this trade right here at trade 2 that I made. So we see prices push into the zone, come back, create a higher low, and retest the bottom of the zone. Now this right here should have been my entry point because this pretty much fits my setup just like everything my trading plan tells me to do. The same way that trade number 1 was a higher low that got established, I drew a level of support, and then I looked to go long off of that. I should have used the same mindset for trade 2, and I thought about it, but I just hesitated because I saw these wicks over here towards the left, and I just wasn't quite sure if there was enough momentum for prices to keep going, but it definitely was. And I think in these occasions, even if you feel skeptical, if you see your setup, you got to take it. So that's what I learned right there, because I actually went long way too high. So I went long right here expecting support from the breakout, but what I've been learning is that buying after a large bull candle can be really tricky because you gotta really think about what this candle right here represents. You might look at it and say, oh, okay, that confirms that the uptrend is definitely strong, but if we've already been moving, we've made 1 higher low, 2 higher lows, really you could call it 3, and this one right here is the 4th. So we're already 4 higher lows into the trend, and then you see a move like this. That doesn't necessarily mean that the trend is confirmed. It might actually mean that the trend is coming to an end, especially when you take into consideration the market environment that you're in that specific day. Now, on this day, May 25th, we were actually coming up into a major level of resistance. So the same level that the sell-off started from when the market opened is the same level that prices stalled out at when this uptrend finally got to that level. So for me to go long up here after prices already bounced off of resistance, it's more so me trying to catch the last wave of the potential up move. And even if I am trying to catch the last wave of an up move, the right thing to do would be to buy at lower prices, not higher prices, because just because I'm expecting the breakout up here doesn't mean I necessarily go long. Because see, my problem was that I had my order already up here as prices came into it. Now what I should have done was I should have saw how prices reacted as they came into that level, and then if I see the buy-in that I'm looking for, then I'll get in and I'll start buying as well. But I think right here I jumped the gun just a little bit too early, just expecting the breakout. I want to be more reactionary in situations like this rather than anticipatory, because sometimes you anticipate but you could be off by just a little bit. So that's what I learned right there on trade 2. Just be more patient and buy at lower prices always. So that moves us on to trade 3. So notice how after we bounced off of resistance up here, we created a lower high where this ellipse is located. We tried to push back to the zone but couldn't really do it. So that means that it's more likely that they'll come back and retest the top of the zone and then actually come and tag that level. Now right here at trade 3, I also went long. So I bought lower like I should have done on trade 2. But the fact that it was a lower high above really made this a very low probability trade. Now I had an idea about that when I took it, but because I missed trade 2, I was just so infatuated with actually being able to get it on the next leg. But that's usually not how it works in the market. If you have an opportunity to get into a trade, you want to take that trade when the opportunity window is open, because when you have the second opportunity, sometimes it's just not as lucrative. And that's something I've been learning over these past few months, and it really doesn't change. It's not too many occasions where getting the second opportunity will be successful. It's just not how it goes, so I think that's just something I got to completely cut out of my trading. Second opportunities are a no-go for me from this point forward. So that's what I learned right there on trade 3. Now the reason I went long also was because of the trend line and the zone, but what I also want to talk about is the fact that you have to respect the most recent price action that you see. So yes, even though there was a channel and a zone, we can't ignore the fact that there was a lower high after we already bounced off a major level of resistance. So after trade 3, we continued down a little bit, all the way back down through the zone. But this time, instead of how we were before at around 950, where we just shot through the zone right here, on this occasion, even though we had a strong selling move down into the zone, we actually respected it a little bit more this time. So let's zoom in a little bit. So on this candle, we see that we pushed into the zone. We almost came back to the bottom, but we weren't able to quite hit it, and they closed like closer towards the upper levels of the zone. And then when they opened on the next candle, they actually came back, they tested it, and came back down to the bottom. So if anybody was looking for a short trade at that moment, they would have been able to get it, even though from a perspective where you're just glancing over it, it might look like it just shot straight through the zone. That's actually not the case on this occasion. So we pushed through the zone and we came back down to create a level of support. Let's see, has this level been created earlier in the market? Nope. I would say that this right here is a new level of support that was created. So as we come into trade 4, I shorted right here, expecting a drop back down to the higher low level of support from trade number 1. Now we almost got there. We couldn't quite touch it, and that right there is a very bullish sign, because if buyers are not even letting prices get down low enough to even try and test the support level from number 1, then that means that it's so much demand in the market that more than likely this could be a major level of support, and it actually turned out to be the lowest prices for that specific time of the day. And after that, prices continue higher for a good amount of time. So once we saw this move happen, I was like, okay, I understand what's going on. Now with trade 4, I was just trying to pretty much pick up the last few scraps of this trade. Now it didn't go far enough to hit my profit target, but it still gave me a reasonable opportunity to take profits, but I still let it come back to break even. And I think sometimes I just need to, I would say that sometimes I need to take the little small profits that the market offers, but I'm kind of having a back and forth between these two ideas of taking profits that don't necessarily reach my scalp target, and then just holding the trade and letting it hit my scalp target. Because sometimes when I take partial profits and it goes and it hits my target, I'm like, dang, I should have just held it. But sometimes when I hold it and I'm like, I could take partial profits, but I won't, then it'll come back to my break even stop. So I'm really trying to study the difference between those two situations and figure out when exactly is the perfect scenario to take partial profits, and when exactly is the perfect scenario to let your scalp target get hit. So I'm still trying to figure that out, but it's like a back and forth. But as time goes on, I think I'll get better with those decisions too. But for now, I'll just have to take the break even trade on trade 4 and roll with that. So this actually, after trade 4 happened, it created one of my favorite setups, which we saw over here at trade number 1, and we saw over here at trade number 2, which is the higher low that gets established after a little bit of a down move. So we had a significant down move, came back, established a level of support, created our lower high. I drew my level of support based on the lowest prices from that lower high. And then what I should have done was look to go long at the level of support, but that's not exactly what happened as we continue on to our next trade at trade 5. Now it's not marked up, but we have trades 5, 6, and 7 right here. So 5, 6, and 7. So on trade 5, see, I traded the setup wrong because I think I got a little bit excited by the zone right here because I know that the zone had been holding up so far throughout the day. So I'm like, okay, if this was the retest of support and then moved up, the zone probably should create the level of support where the next where the next higher low should get established from. So I think that's me once again just kind of trying to anticipate the market a little bit too much. I think when it comes to this setup, what I've learned a lot is that you really only want to go long off of support, because when you trade this setup, you're basically trying to trade the first higher low after a downtrend. So even though more than likely prices will continue up after they make that higher low, you got to remember that all of the sellers in the market that were just selling this entire move down, they're not just going to go away automatically. They'll go away once they see that the bulls have definitely taken over, but there will still be some selling within this overall setup that I'm trading. So you really want to be patient and wait for prices to come back to your level of support and then go long, because more than likely sellers are going to push prices down into that level of support before they take profits. So you don't want to really get caught in that move, and that's what happened right here on trade 5. I'm just trying to anticipate the move too much rather than reacting to the move once it already happened. So at trade 5, just a little bit too early right there. Now on trade 6, to me, I would say that this right here is just a loss that I have to take. I went long at support, but prices came all the way back down and tagged the lowest level of this entire setup at the higher low. Now, what I've also learned about this scenario is that most times prices are going to try and come back and test that lowest price. It might be on the first retest, on the second, or on the third, but at some point in time, they'll try and test that lowest wick, and sometimes they'll come all the way back down to the exact low for that wick, and then they'll find support right there. So that's something that I've been learning a lot. But I'm also, it's like sometimes you want to make sure that you get into the move, so you don't want to put your entry at the lowest possible wick, but you also don't want to put your entry so high that you get stopped out at the lowest price like I did. So it's really more so about finding that sweet spot in between the lowest price of support and that level that you want to put your order at, where you feel like, okay, I could definitely get filled right here. So it's really about finding that perfect spot, and I think that just comes with practice and time. Now on trade 7, I think I just messed up right here because I made my stop loss a lot smaller than it usually is. Usually it's 14 points. So if I had my stop loss right here, notice how this entry was very similar to the entry from trade 6, almost at the exact same prices. If we zoom in a little bit, I think they pretty much are the exact same price. So if I had the exact same stop that I had from trade 6, prices would have never came back down there, and I would have never gotten stopped out, and I would have saw my trade come up and hit my scalp target as they got back up to the top of the zone. So I think I kind of cut my trade short on my own behalf by moving my stop loss a little bit. And the reason I moved the stop loss was because I had taken these 2 losses back to back, and now I became a lot more risk averse because I'm like, man, I can't take 3 losses on the same setup. That's just putting me at a very big disadvantage for the rest of the session. But I think that's the one thing I learned about making the right decisions. Making the right decisions initially will probably lead to better opportunities in the future, because I would have never felt the feeling of being risk averse if I didn't have these 2 losses right here that pretty much I would say could have been avoided. Trade 5 could have definitely been avoided. Maybe trade 6, But I would say, you know what, trade 6 had to happen. But trade 5 could have been avoided. So if I would have had only one loss right here, I would have definitely took the setup again, because this right here is my bread and butter and I trust it. And if it doesn't work the first time, I'll take it again the second time, but only for this setup right here. Because a lot of times you'll have multiple retests of that support level. Like on this occasion, we had the first okay, so the higher level was established right here. This was the first retest. We had a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. And then we came back, had retest number 8 and retest number 9. So this level of support is gonna get touched multiple times. So you really just want to take into consideration everything about the setup, because I used to think that this setup was so simple and so easy, and I wouldn't say that it's not, but it's also a whole lot of details that go behind it. And I think with this setup, it's the small details that really make a difference. So when I have a trade like this, I gotta let my stop be what my stop is gonna be and let my trade run, and trust my analysis. I think that's what it comes down to. So overall, I definitely took some losses today, but I think I learned from my mistakes pretty well. I know exactly what I did wrong. Let's see. I think the only trade I took today that was outside of my trading plan was probably trade number 2, where I'm trying to go long as prices come back into the zone and I'm expecting a breakout. That right there, that's just not in my trading plan. If I do trade a breakout, I want to make sure that I have, confirmation before I get in. So I think out of the 7 trades I took, that was the only one that didn't align with my trading plan. All of the other ones, they did align with my trading plan, but I just had execution, I guess, flaws. Bad entries, bad exits, bad management of my stop losses. So those are the things I need to work on, and I don't have a problem getting better at those things. I think that's something that I can clean up pretty easily, but I'm human. Sometimes we just make mistakes, but I think today was a good day, because even though I had losses, you see right here, I stopped trading because I realized, look, I don't know what's going on right now, but I'm not in rhythm with the market. So let me just call it a day and not dig a hole that's too big. So even though I did take losses today, I was able to cap it out at a certain amount and keep my account alive. And I think that's what matters in the long run. So I'll go into my back testing session tonight, work on these things that I need to clean up, and then come back tomorrow for May 26th and run it back. So until then, good people, I appreciate you for tuning in with me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy.